Good afternoon. I'm Miles Burford, a science analyst working for Environment Canterbury, and that is my colleague Frances Schmechel. She'll be presenting a wee bit later in this slide. And today we're going to be talking about the work we have been kind of collectively progressing with DOC as well, on allowing everyone in the room to have the opportunity to discover and access Canterbury's Braided River bird data. Now, if you're here 2 years ago, you may recall, I'm going to have to do there we go. I haven't changed my slide colour, obviously, but yeah, I was presenting on another presentation 2 years ago about the work I've been doing in this space, so why the data set was important, and my ambitious future goals. 2 years on, I have learnt a lot, lost a bit of hair in the process, and lost a working arm. But I am ready to introduce the Braided River bird application to a wider audience. So my brief presentation outline is sort of the long road. So what have we been doing up to this point today? How our journey to get here, really. So, and then how to navigate the application. And then Frances will be going through some use studies or use cases of what we can do with this data set. Cool. So what data do we actually have? So this is those standardized bird surveys. Many people probably in this room have done them at some stage or another, and it is collecting bird count, observational bird breeding, and then survey effort data. So what survey was done and where. I had a look at the data briefly, and I found 804 river surveys on 64 different rivers in Canterbury. And I just had a wee play, just out of interest, of 25% of the data, like roughly. I found 420 unique names had taken part in those surveys. I wouldn't extrapolate that out times 4, but it's just showing there has been a lot of effort by a lot of people over the last 60 years to get to this point. And I'm not sure how many people are here, but you know, just imagine this times 3 potentially, and those are all the people that have taken part in these surveys. And this is one of these surveys here, actually. So this is one of the first surveys to have ever been done in the 1960s by Brian Bell in the Aotearoa River. So that is one of those 804 surveys. Now, the long road. So as I alluded to, this Braided River bird data has been collected for over 60 years, and it has been collected for the most part and processed and collated in one spreadsheet. And I'm a big proponent of spreadsheets. I love them to death, but it does limit your ability to do some things if it is all housed in one spreadsheet. So essentially what I've been doing is applying a methodical and sometimes painstaking approach to cleaning and updating the data and applying a spatial lens to this data set. And this is, Bernice, feel free to boo me, but this is my attempt at AI to create a long road with a banded dotterel. So feel free to let me know if that did it justice or not. New species of banded dotterel. Okay, so what does the spatial aspect actually mean when I'm saying that? It may sound fancy, it's not really. It's just, this is actually the same area that Rob was just talking about. So this is Buick's Bridge. And what did I do? I just drew a picture on a map, essentially. So I converted I'm doing the wrong one. I converted every area of a river section into a picture, essentially, a polygon on a map. Luckily, this one was really easy because it's called Buick's Bridge to Blowing Point, which has the start and stop section in its name, which means it's really easy for me to figure out what's going on. Because generally, these are just words that I've had to interpret. And then I developed a way to display the count data through the midpoint of that polygon. So, wrong one again. So that one there, this is actually data from 2010 to 2019. So this is an example of the mean number of banded dotterel collected over that time. It's actually 183 is the mean count, and it was all 10 years were collected. where can you access this data and information? On Canterbury Maps. So if you go up to the top there, you can see braided. You just go to Canterbury Maps, you can use the search term braided, river, data, birds, anything. It'll pop up, and it's that little banded dotterel, yeah, on the left there. You can also search using Google, so feel free to start interrogating this database. Okay. Cool. So this is what happens when you open up the database. So you're just going to be looking at a map with a lot of polygons. So these are all the river sections. But I'm just going to give everyone a brief outline on how to use it and interact with it, because it can be quite tricky and it's not the most intuitive database to use. But I'm working within what I can, essentially. But up the top, you've got instructions on how to use it and your base map. So the base map will be any of the base layers available in Canterbury Maps. Then we've got our layer list. So essentially all those little boxes there are different layers that you can turn on and off within the database. So at the moment you can see the Braided River Bird sections is the only one clicked on. And those colours essentially are the amount of effort that have been involved in those surveys over the years. So the darker they are, the more surveyed they have been. Moving on over here, these are layer-specific filters. So these are actually just overlapping polygons or points of all the data that has been collected over 60 years. So you're really going to need to use filters to actually navigate and use this database. And these ones are for the specific layers that you can see there. So those little funnel-shaped icons. And this one here will probably be one of your best friends if you're going to really interrogate the data. So it's literally you're going to be able to set a filter and design your own filter to interrogate it as you need to, because these filters aren't going to be able to do everything, so you're going to have a wee play. Moving over to the left-hand side of the screen, you've got a multi-layer filter. So essentially that's the same thing, but it applies to more than one layer of those layer filters. You've got your legend over there and attribute tables, so you can actually physically open up a table and see all the, what species, what the count was, when it was done. And you've got a measuring tool. I actually found that quite useful the other day. And then you have your zoom in and out button. Cool. A bit more about the sort of the layers. So these, it's a bit of a lolly scramble of colour here, but bear with me. So these top three are essentially, I've pulled them into decadal mean counts of braided river birds. So essentially each decade will have a different bubble, and I've pulled them into three different views, essentially because a normal, a southern blackback gull colony would swamp the largest banded dotterel. So I had to pull them into different view layers, essentially. And moving down, we've got, this is essentially all of the raw data that has ever been collected, summarised a wee bit, but pretty much all the raw data there, displayed very much like an eBird display there. So you're really going to need to use that, set your own filter to work through that. There we go. And after that, we actually have the colony and nest count. So, it looks a bit less unwieldy there, but essentially this is just the observational nest information, and it really gives a good indication on where the bird's breeding on the river. A subset of the stuff that Grant was showing before is included in this. So this is essentially everything in there. I would really just, set caution when using this. Like, a lack of observations essentially might mean nothing's been done there, rather than a lack of suitable river bird habitat. Because when people have been pulling this data in, is being quite patchy. This one here is that polygon section. So essentially it's one polygon for all the river sections that have ever been done, pulled together with all the years that have been surveyed. So, and then, as I said, the colour indicates how often the river section has been done. And lastly, I just pulled together a lot of other already published layers in Canterbury Maps that have some relevance to braided river birds. Cool. If anyone's ever seen me present anywhere, they may know that I'm a fan of animations. So here's my attempt to show you through how you may use and interact with this application. So in this case, I'm going to have a look at the other braided river birds, which are the smaller solitary birds. So I'm going to come over here with my big mouse and click on that sort of lolly scramble of information. But because it's got a lot of things there, I'm going to actually have to change that and filter it down. So in this scenario, I'm going to want to have a look for black-fronted dotterel. So here we go. That's my little mouse. There we go. Cool. So you can see that that's essentially every single black-fronted dotterel that has ever been recorded in these braided river surveys. I'm not going to bother grabbing the pointer, but you can kind of see in the middle there, there's a couple of overlapping points, and that's because these are collected. This is every single decade that's ever been done. So if you want to actually look for a specific decade, you're going to have to interrogate the database a wee bit further. So you've got a couple of options. You could actually come over to here and add that as a filter, or you can come over to this multi-filter option and click on that, and then actually choose your decade of choice. So I'm just choosing 2020. Obviously, it's not a full decade here because we've only got 5 years worth of information. But that is essentially every black-fronted dotterel observation pulled into a mean count for the last 5 years. Obviously, all those river sections are showing, but they don't actually all relate to the survey effort that's been done.
So Miles built the car, and I got to have a chance to try to drive it. So this is my effort at showing you what the data can look like. So, as Miles said, if you want to try to find this, you can go into Google and just put Canterbury Map Braided River, or you can do the same in Ecosia, or if you're in the Canterbury Maps, you just put in braided and boom, up it comes. And given that this is the year of the ryebill, I just thought I would do let's hear it for the ryebill. Do an example based on ryebill. Go Bati. So, like Miles said, you pick ryebill, you pick a decade. We'll start with the 60s and work our way through. And I'm going to match the survey effort as well, so you can tell why it wasn't seen elsewhere. Here's this 1960s. And you can see Mackenzie and Waitaki Basin were the boom. But also, for some reason, and somebody here will probably be able to tell me why, that little section there is very popular with braided river bird surveyors. Sorry, I'm just catching up with the notes, I think. Okay, so, and then we've got the Ashley Rakahuri, the first count there, and also the Conway River. And no ryebill spotted in any of those latter three. So then, going into the 1970s, we've got repeat surveys in the Mackenzie, the lower Waitaki, which is the first ryebill records there, and we've got the mighty Rakaya, and it becomes very apparent how important that is for ryebill. And then we've also had surveys up north in the Hurunui and the Waiaufa, none recorded there. Moving into the 1980s, we've got a big push of surveys in that year. The Mackenzie, again, very well surveyed. The lower Waitaki showing good numbers there, and 5 different, the pink dots, by the way, are the ryebill. For the first time, these lower South Canterbury rivers surveyed, reasonably good spread of pink dots there for the ryebill. And then the upper Rakitata showing its importance there too. We've got the Ashburton, which has a couple dots there. And in the upper Rakaya, there's, just look, that's a Cameron fan there. It's showing the pink dot on the one side and the Harper on the other. Nothing there. Very first surveys of the lower Waimakariri, so nothing showing there, but in the upper Waimakariri, we've got a couple dots there. And the Ashburton being surveyed yet again. So there's very consistent surveys there. There was repeat surveys of the Conway and the Huranui, but no records on either of those. So the Ashley Rakahuri is the northern limit for the Ryebill in the 80s. And then moving into the 90s, we've got fantastic effort and numbers there in the Mackenzie again. And we've got the ongoing Havelock River being repeated. It must be beautiful up there or something. Lower South Canterbury Rivers, no Ryebill, even with repeat surveys. The Ashburton, the lower, that's the Ashburton. That's been resurveyed again. It's kind of the queen or king of repeat surveys there on the Ashburton. We've got the Ashley Rakahuri also very consistently surveyed, and the Ryebill there, and same with the Upper Waimakariri. We've got the first survey of the lower Waipara there, but no Ryebill showing up. And we've got one little section there of the Clarence-Waiatoa River surveyed, none showing up there. Moving into, so that was the end of the 1990s. Now we move into a new century, the 2000s. We've got our very faithful repeats in the Mackenzie, Go Project River Recovery, and the dock staff. We've got the Lower Waitaki again, but only one dock this decade. I think there was just 1 year of survey then. Lots more survey effort down in South Canterbury. No birds showing up there, unfortunately. We've got the Lower Rakatata with good numbers, as well as the Upper Rakatata. And we've got the Ashburton again, showing good numbers, and the Cass, I'm pretty sure that's the Cass fan there. And then we've got the lower, just check my notes there. Cameron fan, sorry. And then the lower Rakaya there with reasonable numbers. And for the first time, surprisingly, I think this is the first time, I'll just double check my notes on that too, is we've got a repeat survey of the lower Waimakariri, but this time we've got the first records of Ryebill there. Really interesting. And then we've got the Waiaufa. This ECan started doing surveys there, and we bumped the Ashley Rakahuri off the northern limit. Sorry, ARG. And then we had a whole lot of surveys of, we had repeats of the Ashley and Huranui, both which recorded Ryebill, and the first record for Ryebill in the Huranui, and then a lot of smaller rivers were surveyed, but no records there all across the region. Moving into 2010s, again, lots of survey, a reasonable amount of survey effort in the lower rivers area, but only one record. Up in the north, repeat surveys, similar patterns, same with the Ashburton. Mid-Rec, this was interesting. Mid-Rec, I think this was the first time there'd been surveys there and good numbers. And then quite similar patterns here in the northern part of the region with similar sort of patterns to what we had seen before. And the Waimakariri there is looking really good for Ryebill numbers. And there was a first record for the Upper Huranui. Again, a lot of smaller rivers surveyed, but nothing turning up there. 2020, so we're back into our decade now. And we've got, I won't repeat sort of the patterns that we've already seen, but I will point out a couple special things. And one is that we had a new survey on the Poulter and a record there. We also had our first record, I think, in the Selwyn River, and we had a first record for the Waipara River. So, and that's the decade half done. And this is combining all decades. This is the pattern we see for Ryebill, which is obviously, I think something, I'd love to know if anybody knows, but somewhere 80, 90, 95% of the breeding range of Ryebill in Canterbury. So super important for it. But when we dig down a bit, there are some patterns that I started to see that were interesting. Here's the Ryebill in those lower rivers up in the last century, and that's this century. Last century, this century. So disappearing, it looks like. And this was an interesting pattern too. Here's in the mid-Mackenzie, last century, this century, last century, this century. So some interesting patterns showing up. And also, this data set is real handy for comparing. So here was the kind of survey effort in the 2000s for the Waiaufa, and this is what the previous survey had been. So you can quickly compare, are you comparing like with like? Very handy. Turns, quick. What turn is this? Go on, somebody knows. White-fronted, good job. That's white-fronted turn. So you can see very coastal. Which one is this one? Be brave. No? Yes, Caspian, good job. How about this one? Yes, excellent. And this one? Well done. Tarapirohi. What this doesn't show is that Tarapirohi depend 100% on braided rivers. Those other 3 species don't. So great for showing up patterns. Great for showing up where we haven't surveyed. This is the only part of the Clarence Waiatoa that's ever been surveyed, and only in 1 year, 1992. Big opportunity there, somebody. Some agency. So, yay to the wrybill, bird of the year. This was the 2019 effort at Botti, but this year is going to be successful. Even our very own Nick Ledgert was involved in the previous campaign, and it inspired a composition about a flung scarf of wrybill. Isn't that a beautiful thing?
Okay.
So yes, we're connected across the country because of the Braided Rivers.